Hi everyone, sorry for the delay in starting. There is a very funny story to tell about that delay, but it's a story for another time. Appreciate you all making the time and joining us here today for the webinar. Before we dive in, there are a few details I want you to keep in mind. So firstly, we launched this series to share stories and insights on how different teams are building their departments. And today we have Deb with us, and we want you to gain as much as possible from her experience. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A section on the side there, and we'll address your questions at the end, unless they're really relevant to what we're talking about, and then we'll try and insert them as we go. Throughout the session, we'll also be sending out anonymous polls, and your honest responses will help provide a valuable glimpse into how your peers are feeling and the challenges they face in their organizations. So please participate in those. And lastly, don't miss our LinkedIn live session on Thursday afternoon in the US, Thursday night in Europe, and Friday morning in Australia. I'll be debating a hot topic with Richard Hawker, ex-Bain consultant turned CX and VOC consultant. Are CX surveys dead or dying? So it'll be interesting topic of conversation, I'm sure. So today I have with me Deborah Walker, who is the Director of Consumer Insights at Michaels. Deb has had an incredible career in insights and research. So to ensure we do that justice, I am not going to try and introduce her, and I'm going to ask Deb to introduce herself.
All right, great. Thank you, Ryan. It's so great to be here with you guys today. Deb Walker, like you said, I'm Director of Consumer Insights at Michaels. You guys might not be familiar with Michaels unless you're in the States or in Canada, but we are an arts and craft retailer. We also sell seasonal decor and party supplies. So a lot of what I do is around finding out what our customers want and need, pushing that through. My history, though, is varied. I've had an amazing path along the way, all the way from home building, where I got my start. I was actually a number one salesperson for a while for the whole company, so I've done that too. But a lot of it sticks to the roots of research insights. After my home building stint, I went to a company called Hellsberg Diamonds and really helped with the retail experience of buying fine jewelry. After that, I went to an interactive agency. So we worked with a lot of the companies in the States, the top companies here with their website presence, finding out what they want and need on the website. After that, I did consulting for about 9 years before I came to Michaels about 5 years ago.
Thanks for that intro, Deb. Quite a varied background. I didn't know all of that about you. I feel like I know you a little bit better. For those, yeah, I'm trying to imagine you as a top salesperson. I want to meet that version of Deb. For those that don't know me, I'm Ryan Stewart. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Capiche, and I'm your guide on this journey through an ever-evolving landscape of customer experience, voice-to-customer analytics, and perhaps most pertinent recently, AI. I've got close to 20 years of experience in natural language processing and AI and its application in a range of industries, including enhancing customer experiences. Join me as we dive into the world of insights, exploring the tools and tactics that are reshaping the way businesses understand their customers. So Deb, when you first joined Michaels, the Customer Insights program needed some work. Could you start by telling us about the initial state of the Customer Insights program or Consumer Insights program and the key steps you took to revamp it?
Yeah, no problem at all. I was hired on about 5 years ago. They did not have any single person within the company that would do primary research. So quantitative, qualitative research, really digging into customer insights and providing information. They had a rudimentary, what we call a brand health tracker that they ran. They also did some purchase surveys with the customers to gauge satisfaction. So we had a few of those things going on, but really it was building from the ground up. There wasn't much here to work with. So it was starting from scratch. And it's a process, if you can imagine. So some of the things when you first walk in, I don't know how many of you guys are brand new into a role or about to maybe even jump into a role where you need to build this from the ground up, or take it to new heights. It might not be new to you, but how do you elevate that to a new height within your company? I think the first thing that you'll want to do is really kind of take inventory of what has been done. Seek to understand all the different research that has been done, how they use research, talk with a lot of people, sit down, have meetings with them, find out, what really makes them tick. What are the burning questions they have? My favorite thing was just sitting down with a lot of key stakeholders within Michaels and finding out from them, who is the customer? And then better yet, why do you think that? So that was a foundation to look at and then see about, do we bust that myth or do we confirm that is true if it's not founded on good science and good facts? So seeking to understand, looking at the inventory of things that are out there, and then just looking at the different systems that you have going. If you have a system that's running, oftentimes you're doing this for a trend analysis. So you don't want to vary the system too much because then you lose your trend. So if you're going to make some changes to things that are trended out, you got to get them right. That would be like a brand health tracker or the customer VOC, what we call VOC, and that's our post satisfaction surveys that we send out across all the different touch points somebody could interface with Michaels.
Yeah, interesting. And on VOC, and you clarified there what you mean when you talk about VOC. And I'm conscious that as time's gone on, I guess VOC's kind of changed in ways that don't have a hard and fast definition. So I'm wondering, how do you define voice of customer? Does unsolicited feedback like online reviews or conversations happening in a call center or back and forward emails in the support center, do they fall under your definition of VOC?
Yes, those would. To me, it's any kind of interface that they've had with the company, whether they're reactive to a question that you send out asking for feedback, or they're proactive about putting it out in a social space or reaching out to the call center with concerns or questions. That all counts. They've had an interaction with your brand and they want to tell people about it. So whether it's, like I said, filling out the survey on that experience or proactively posting to social media, Google reviews, those count. Also just looking at, the call center, what transcripts, what types of content are coming in. That's their voice, right? They're telling you what they want and need in that experience with your brand.
So I know that you did a lot of things when you revamped the program. I know that you expanded the touch points that you were dealing with customers from 3 to 7. As you mentioned, you overhauled the brand tracker study. And one of the really cool things that you did was start the Michael's Make a Circle program, which I want to come back to because I think there's a lot of insights there for the audience. But first, I want you to talk me. Oh, sorry, Deb, go on.
I was going to say there are a lot of different arms that you can build within this, and it's expanding your toolkit as there's appetite with the company. So the brand health tracker, those are very vital. The voice of the customer or CX surveys or however you want to say it, those are also very vital. But then what are the next layers up? The in-house research community, huge win. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then also social listening. That is incredible. What are people saying out there and, on social media about your brand or other things that are happening? So that's also very huge. And then developing skills to be able to do in-house qualitative and in-house quantitative primary research to fill in the needs that are out there.
And is that how you would think about how you thought about what you did at Michael's and how you would think about building whether it's building or revamping? Is it about a layer approach and thinking about what is the kind of pillars, what's the foundation the program builds on, making sure you're getting that right and then building up through it?
Absolutely. It's within those tried and true instruments, like trying to pick and choose the things that make sense to keep and then finding out where there are gaps. I think every single company probably falls into what I like to call the Frankenstein approach to research. You have a brand tracker or a voice of the customer survey that might go out for post satisfaction metrics, and people keep wanting to add another question over here, and it might not always jive. It might not be the best place for it. So after a while, you get this 40-minute long survey about all kinds of things that don't really matter. So it's really taking it back down, focusing in on what is really important for your company and your brand.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, nothing worse than those
I know.
Unnecessarily long surveys. No one wants to answer those surveys.
It's interesting. I've read some stats. About 10 years ago, a person would not think twice about filling out a 15-minute survey. But now,
interesting.
Now it's about 5 to 7 minutes. If you go beyond that, you've lost their mind share. So it's keeping it tight. I was just telling one of my team members today, if you're going to ask a question, be prepared to use it. right? Don't just put something in there because it's a nice to have. What do you must have to make this successful? Cut the other stuff out. Respect that
Yeah.
user because they just won't actively answer correctly for you. It won't be reliable.
And don't ask questions you should already know the answer to. Like if you've got the answer of a piece of customer behavior that you could dig out of your operational systems with effort, don't defer it to the customer to tell you that piece of data. Anyway, we could do a whole nother webinar on that
I
topic.
know.
Instead of doing that, how about tell me a little bit more about the revamp of the program, but in particular, maybe some of the results that have been delivered.
Oh, yeah, this has been incredible. There's a lot of different ways that our customers can interface with a Michaels company. We have, of course, the in-store, you shop and you buy in-store. That's one way. We have a division that we actually make custom frames for people's pictures, prints, jerseys, you name it. We can frame it and make it look great. That's in our stores. We offer birthday parties for children. That's a completely different touch point. We do omni-channel, and then we also have a couple of entities where we're looking at the .com space. So we have our michaels.com. We have this entity called makerplace.com where these folks that make these wonderful handcrafted goods can sell to other people. So each of these unique touch points really needs a unique survey pointed to the specific needs and desires of understanding for each of those. And so that's what we set about doing. I will say there are a couple of overarching KPIs that you're going to want to keep very consistent so you can cross compare against the different channels. The ones that we use would be an overall satisfaction or a CSAT or whatever you want to call them. And the other is a net promoter score. Keeping that very similar in voice is really key to see how things stack up within your company and who needs some improvement. Oh, I don't hear anything.
Sorry, have you done much digging to see if the OSAT or MPS is connected to the types of customer behaviors that you like? Well, I assume stuff like spend or repeat visits.
Yes, and that's where the beauty is. It's not just, oh, by the way, our overall satisfaction, highly satisfied, is 75%. So that's what I think of as okay. And why is that important to me? So we do have a few other things that we look at and we dig into that. We do modeling behaviors against that overall satisfaction number or net promoter score to see what will take somebody from, we do a 1 to 5 scale, Likert scale for overall satisfaction. What would take you from satisfied number 4 to very satisfied number 5? And we're isolating these different initiatives to know what really moves the needle. Do you know why it's important? The people who are very satisfied spend in your store 20% more than the satisfied. Having those key metrics to back up the reason why this is important is huge. So being able to have that within your own system, vital. And then we take a look at those markers and we also look at what moves that average ticket or average spend in the store. We look at what moves NPS. And this is, Brian, how we use your tool the most. I'll tell you, we have one singular slide, and I think it's one of the ones that's coming up next. That is an executive favorite here at Michaels. And it's because of you.
The linking of the OSAT and MPS to the spend stuff, is that something that you are constantly reinforcing with stores, or is it something that you did at the start that kind of got the buy-in to the MPS and OSAT and now you don't look at it as much?
And we look at it every single month and see how it's moving. And we know those markers. And what's interesting is when you adjust and tweak different systems over time, sometimes they aren't as impactful. Like I fixed or resolved this issue. Like speed of checkout now is wonderful. People can get in and out of the store really fast. But now here's the issue we need to focus on to continue to evolve and improve.
Yeah.
So as things change, you morph systems, those models, they will change. So one big thing is if you take anything out of this, don't think of it as a set it and forget it. I changed it once, it's great. It's an iterative process, right? So what we were talking about with the new voice of the customer research, and you see the graphic on there, oh my gosh, response rates went up double. Yeah, but they're
Mm,
slowly tweaking back down. So we're going, wait a minute, something is going on here. Let's dig into why. And it's all about subject lines. All the different systems that you email surveys to, all of a sudden, what wasn't spam is spam now. So you have to always stay on top of things and test different ways of presenting this out to people to make sure you're reaching their inbox and then satisfying them enough that they'll click through.
yeah, and obviously it goes without saying, a lot of this stuff isn't achievable if you haven't got your data back of house in order. If you don't have a nice way to link individuals to number of times they visit, how much they spent, what their NPS score is, what their OSAT score is, then you're not going to be able to get these sorts of insights. But
Absolutely.
they're super impactful,
Oh,
clearly, as you've
absolutely.
demonstrated.
Yeah, NPS will definitely drive more future business for us than overall satisfaction. Because NPS, you think about what it is, it's more of a not that single point in time, but it's more how you think of the company after all your different experiences, and that last one added a little nudge out there versus when you say overall satisfaction with your last visit, that was that just that last thing. They may have given
Mm.
you just a horrible, horrible number because one thing went wrong, but their NPS still might get them to come back because they have remembered several times it's been fabulous. So,
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you've built the foundations. You've changed how you're doing the brand tracking. You've expanded the touch points. You've built the foundations, and you've touched on this a little bit already. But how do you go about understanding the VOC data and sharing the insights with the business? And what have you found that's worked really well? And I'm going to change the slides here, and it's got one of your favorite visualizations on it, as
I
you
know.
referenced earlier.
I know it's a little bit small, and I have kind of morphed out. So when we have our voice of the customer work, we have a direct connection from our vendor partner over to Capiche. And so we roll in this data. We've created certain themes that we're seeing. So we ask somebody, what is your overall satisfaction? And why did you state that? And within that data, we're also pulling across number of items they purchased, what departments they shopped, the net promoter, various survey elements we pull in through with it. And so what we're able to do within this, everybody loves a quadrant map, right? Who doesn't? So within the
Mm.
quadrant map, this is looking at that average spend. We call it AOV here, average order value. Everybody has an acronym of some sort for that. So we're looking at which of these themes, when somebody says my overall satisfaction was for, but why? So within these themes, we're finding out what ones really elevate that average order value. And then the other side is net promoter score. Where I told you it's a little bit better predictor of future behavior than that overall satisfaction. So in this case, you can see, I believe it's A. I can't see, it's really small, but there's one of the dots, there's A. And I will tell you, this is our actual live data. And this one is helpfulness of our associates or team members.
Yeah,
So,
interesting. So the what I think is interesting here as well is, and obviously not statistically valid, but still illustrative. You can clearly see. So just to explain this visualization, and I know it's a little bit hard to see, so let me talk it through for people. NPS impact on the bottom. So essentially, what's the relationship to NPS of this particular theme? The dots are the themes themselves, and you've masked them out for obvious reasons. And then your y-axis on the side is that average order value. You can see that the things that are in the kind of bottom left-hand side, they're the things that are having the biggest negative impact on Net Promoter Score and also have the lowest average order value. The things in the top right-hand side are the things that are having the biggest positive impact on Net Promoter Score and have the biggest average order value. And you can kind of see, if you were to draw a trend line here, you could kind of see it would be going up and to the right. And what's that telling you? It's telling you that as NPS impact increases and tends positive, then the average order value for that particular theme goes higher. So not statistically significant, but you can kind of see here, if you just interpret this graph, that yes, indeed, if the NPS impact is positive, then the average order value goes up. And it's really difficult to overstate how powerful it is to tie something like Net Promoter Score to a commercial KPI that the business really cares about in order to get that buy-in from people at the organization for Net Promoter Score. Particularly a little bit different for Michael's, because you have such a large number of staff that actually are customer facing and are dealing with customers every day. But for roles in the organization that don't have that direct contact with the customer, something like this, showing that link between the Net Promoter Score and the commercial KPI, so powerful to get them to buy into NPS as a system.
And what I will tell you, like, that big blue dot in the strength section, right? That is also sized by the volume of comments that are around it. And we do track over time and measure how big and small, how they contract and grow and shift over time. But that one is helpfulness of the associate. So if somebody comes in, they're looking for an item, or they're like, oh my gosh, the item I wanted to finish this project that I have, this painting that I'm trying to do, I don't see the right brush. They talk to one of the associates and they might be able to point out ultimate substitutions for them or help them find where it's in a different location. So that is both boosting that NPS, which brings them back, and they were spending more in the store. It's pretty incredible. And what the CEO did about 2 weeks ago, because of this chart, he's pulled back on some programs that were utilizing staff that wasn't as effective as being on the floor ready to help. So there was a few little activities where we had some kids crafts on a Sunday afternoon. Well, he decided to put a pin in that for a second because it wasn't bringing in a great amount of money, but pointed this towards put those people on the floor, help customers because of that.
Yeah, that's so awesome, because this is the exact value proposition that customer insights, consumer insights, voice of customer programs. It's interesting when you ask people in this profession, hey, how are you measured, or how do you think you should be measured? And I often get very varied answers. And unsurprisingly, with insights people, the measures they come up with can be quite qualitative rather than quantitative. But I think the value that teams like yours and business units like yours that exist in organizations around the world, the value that should be delivered to the organization is better decisions and reducing the risk of decisions. And that example of the CEO being able to make a decision based off a very clear understanding of what people are saying and how it's impacting the behaviors the business cares about, and therefore being able to make a decision, that's the holy grail, right? That's how you go from a nice to have part of an organization to a need to have part of the organization in the eyes of the CEO.
Yes. Because too many times insights are thought of as that's nice. But now, if you can get to that point where they're like, we need to ask CI before we make this decision, it's like, thank you, because we're here to help. I promise.
I guarantee you there isn't a CEO in the world, particularly of a B2C business, that wouldn't pay vast amounts of money for a direct link into the brain of all of their customers to understand what they're thinking. And customer insights and VOC are the closest the CEOs have to that. So you should be the CEO's best friend. Anyway, coming back to Michael's Makers Circle, talk me through this, because from what I understand, this is a really innovative approach to in-house research in the retail industry, something that has a bit of a cool backstory for how it came about. And you've built such a large engaged community around the Michael's brand. How have you done it?
Michael's Maker Circle does have an interesting backstory. When I first got here, to say that insights were gathered in a hodgepodge kind of way is an understatement. You'd be amazed at some of the things people do, from scoping out people's shopping bags after they leave a competitor to inviting a group of friends over who might knit to find out what yarn needs to go on the shelf. I was like, wait a minute. There's better ways, I promise. So I came, my boss at the time, she was the vice president of strategy, came to me and said, hey, Deb, can you write up a few questions for us? I'm like, for what? We had a new space within our stores where people could actually make and create their own projects. It was called Makerspace. And so they wanted to get people's reaction. They're going to have a grand opening in 3 stores where we are in Texas, in the States. They have those grand openings, and they wanted to send executives out with some questions to ask people as they walk by. And I'm like, what are we exactly trying to do here? And they were really just trying to get a better understanding of customers' reactions to this space. And I said, what if I have a better idea that will be unbiased and not reliant on you guys spending your weekend out in stores? And so we did a pop-up community. So this is a 3-day community that we had. We quickly recruited some people who shopped those stores, and then we sent them out on a mission. Take some pictures. What inspired you? What did you think about the Tula wall? We asked all these interesting questions. And they came back in a community format and really gave us some great results on what this meant to them. So it was great, much better process. So that started the taste for this Agile Insights, right? Because I was asked to do this on a Tuesday. We recruited everybody, sent them out on a Saturday, and the results were back on Monday. 1 week, and to get really tight information that was really cool. So we bloomed that group to a small beta community for a while before COVID, 160 makers, and now we're at 3,500 people who are avid makers and creators that most of them absolutely adore Michaels. And then others actually shop the competition. We're not afraid to bring other people in because we're all about trying to get better. So I calculated for the CFO recently, we probably invest a certain amount of money into this program, but we get $800,000 in return. If you think about all the projects that we do and run through this, so we spend a very small fraction of it to get this up and running. So we get insights and we post discussion topics, and it's rich, it's wonderful, and great insights.
Mm. And community is such a powerful driver of loyalty as well in today's market.
Yes.
In fact, it's probably even been amplified through social media and people being able to connect to each other even more frequently, and the rise of online reviews. Um, I don't think it's any surprise that brands that cultivate a really strong community tend to achieve much greater success compared to their competitors. So you said 160 to 3,500 participants in the community. How did you create such a loyal and engaged community?
Part of it's just who we are. There are a few what we call passion categories out there, and I happen to have worked with two different industries that would be considered that. You definitely have fine jewelry, right? Because there's passion behind when you're buying a ring or something to give to somebody else. There's a lot of passion usually behind it. But making, these folks are just so into the making and creating. So if anybody here's listening in as a maker creator, you get it. It's a labor of love. We talk about love languages sometimes around here. It's like giving of themselves through what they're making, and they like to talk about it. So they have this bond with the brand because it's helped them foster this beautiful addiction. We also call it gateway into this addiction of making and creating. And then we also have the nostalgia factor. We've been here for 50 years, and so many people say, oh my gosh, you were my favorite when I was a child, and I still love coming here. So not everybody can expect the engagement that we have, but it's been very enlightening for sure.
Yeah, it's such a shining example of how powerful a community can be
Yeah.
when fostered correctly. And the thing that I like the most about that story is the origin of it, which is, you spotted an opportunity and said, hey, we can spin something up here and it's turned into something amazing. That's awesome. But what I really love is the fact that the executives were going to go out to the store and try and do this anyway, which kind of says to me there's this thirst from the top of a real customer obsession or a desire to understand what's driving customer behaviors, and
Yes.
that in itself, that desire for understanding from the top is really important when you're trying to deliver these insights and move the organization to be more customer obsessed.
Very true. And not everybody's lucky that way. And sometimes you
Yes.
have to build it and cultivate it. It takes
Mm.
time. Do not give up. It takes time.
And hey, reach out to Deb if you need help on how to do it, because clearly she's done it well. Now I want to dig deeper into your blueprints for success. After 5 years working at Michaels to rebuild the consumer insights function, what do you think is required for you to continue to deliver those wins in the VOC success in 2024 and beyond? And second part to the question, with the beauty of hindsight, is there anything you think you would have done differently in the last 5 years?
Yeah. Great questions. I will tell you one of the biggest things for me, first and foremost, is having a great team. I've been lucky enough to hire 4 other individuals to work on my team. Some of them may be hanging out on this call. I don't know. I told them to go home. It's after hours here. I tell you what, they're hanging around. But having a really great team and having that, fostering that where you're always open for pushback, right? So making sure that they have a voice, you listen to what they're saying, and if there's pushback, it's legit. Like, let's do that. That's a great idea, and let them run with it. So team is really huge. I think evolving with the times, like I said before, don't go around and just set it and forget it. Like, I changed it, it's good. We're always looking to iterate and improve, but in the meantime, keeping some of the baseline stable. So always evolve. AI, huge, huge. And the integration of this and the use of this in different areas has been outstanding. So always look and seek for that new tool to put in your toolkit so that you can deliver those insights that you need. And I know you
Yeah.
asked the question of like, if I had to do it all over again, what would you change? I'd say, let's not do COVID. That wasn't fun. Anyhow, this is actually the third opportunity I've had to build an insights function from the ground up. So I have listened, learned, and lived through a lot of things. So when you're doing this, I kind of learned from my prior mistakes and try to do it right this go around. And so it's really just taking that slow, methodical process, building those quick wins, continue to touch base. Do not be quiet, and wait for work to come to you. You go and talk to the stakeholders, find out what is hot at that moment, and then see how you can infuse that with the CI. That is one of the biggest ways to succeed.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And obviously, as we touched on earlier, having that executive buy-in and support from the top is super important. You've clearly got it in spades. What do you attribute that to? How have you built that buy-in, and what role has it played in the success for the programs, do you think?
Very good question. So I think it's being able to deliver in and talk at first with like one or two, right? So you get these executive buy-ins where they believe, they see the magic. You deliver these insights and not just here's the information, bye. That's not the way to do it. You need to be able to put the so what behind it. So when you're able to interpret that and be the voice of a customer, this is what they want and need from us as a brand. That's gold, right? And then when that turns out to be true and they use it and make changes, it's like, hallelujah, this is beautiful, right? So developing one person, one unit at a time, and then collecting what we call our fans, consumer insight fans, executive fans around here, and just continue to collect them. And then after a while, it becomes a phenomenon where they're coming to you and like, hey, Deb, I need you to work on this because we need to make this decision.
Yeah, interesting. And I wonder, do you have any examples of insights that have been shared that have either led to creation of some of these fans or further distilled the level of cheer and joy for the CI function at Michael's?
Well, we already talked about the one with the helpfulness. It's like, hello, let's use this people advisor, right? That one's one of my favorite feathers in my cap. Can I put it up here right now? Put it in because that's awesome. That's what every insights person wants is when somebody reacts to what you've done. So beautiful. So, a couple of other things. One of the very first major wins was talking with our e-commerce SVP. We at Michael's have probably been selling goods on a website for only 8 years. Before that, it was more of just an information portal to people. And so a lot of the things that we pushed out on the website and how it was laid out and structured was how we thought of the products, not what the customers thought. And it's like, that's totally backwards. And I said, let's go and find out. We have all these different items that we're selling. Let's see how they look for it and make sure we architect that in the way that they think in the search bar and then in the taxonomy. Major differences on being able to find. We ask questions about finding the goods you're looking for and conversion, getting those people to cross over and buy. That's been huge. So that was one of my favorite first wins. You're like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Like they had an electric cutting machine in the paper category. It's like, nobody thinks of it that way. And the SVP was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So other things are just like finding out when you're in a store, if anyone's in the States and have been to one of our stores, it's chock full There's a lot of stuff in a store. We don't have a super big footprint, but we pack a lot of stuff in it. So it's making it easier for customers to find the items they're looking for, and looking at decision trees is what we call them. I'm sure you guys probably call it something similar. So I need a paintbrush, and I go to the paintbrush aisle, and I am staring at this wall of paintbrushes going, oh, damn, that's a lot. So thinking through as the customer, what's that first decision node? How am I reacting to that? What am I looking for first? I narrow down the options. What am I looking for second? Narrow down more options to help them hone in on that item. So working with the merchandise display teams to be able to help people find the items a little easier. That is cool. One of the most recent things that got massive change in our stores is the layout of frames. We sell ready-made frames for people in addition to custom frames. And when we found out, it was overwhelming. When somebody looks for a frame, they're not looking for colors. They're not necessarily looking for materials. They're looking for the size. What size opening, what size picture can I put in there? And everything that we had out in display was not orchestrated that way. So they're literally wandering all the aisles looking for the size that they're looking for. Now it's all size oriented. So I'm still waiting on the numbers to hear how that's going to go as far as the boost in sales and conversion for those units. But that was just a new change that was made.
Yeah, interesting. And just a quick reminder to everyone, make sure we're getting towards the end. So if you've got questions you're thinking of asking, it takes time to type these things out. So chuck them in the Q&A section now. The example you just gave me reminded of a different use case that I saw, a related use case, but slightly different. I saw a customer analyze, so they had a search bar on their website, and their hypothesis was that people only really use this search bar when they can't obviously find the thing that they're looking for. And they'd collected, I think it was close to 100,000 different searches on their website for the past 12 months. So they ran all those search queries through Capiche to understand what were people searching for and how are they related, and used the output of that analysis to then feed into how they reorganize their website and optimize it for information retrieval. So yeah, very, very similar use case. And it's surprising those number of use cases that pop up where just a little bit of out of the box thinking lands you on such a cool and impactful piece of work that you can deliver to the organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So last question. You've been in the insights and research industry for, over 25 years.
A long
time. Over your career, what books or resources have you used to build your knowledge, or could you recommend to our audience today?
Yeah, there are a few things. I mean, you're going to see an odd lot of stuff on this little list that we have put together for you. One book, it's an oldie, but I will tell you, it was like a foundational element for my career. Is how customers think. It's really digging into those nuances of when they're looking for something. How are they reacting to the space? What are they going through? What's the thought process of it? I love that book. I don't know if anyone else has read that. It's probably from 2020 or something. I'll tell you, or 2000. Sorry, take the 20 off. So it's but I will tell you, just what you really need to seek is things that stimulate your brain to think differently, right? And I'll tell you, one author that really does it for me is Malcolm Gladwell. Whether his ideas are super valid or not, but it's just the way he thinks about stuff and how he writes about it and pulls different data points together to showcase what he's trying to say. Excellent reads for me personally. So I found a lot of wealth in them to think outside the box on how to approach things. And then two of the weirder ones out here, they're not really books, but I will tell you, my whole career at Michael's, I always think of it as the myth busting. If you're in the States, I don't know if it's across, the countries that are represented here or not, but it's a group called Mythbusters. They are science effects guys that seek to take widely held belief structures and prove it to be true or bust the myth. So here at Michael, I was telling you, my first question was like, who was our customer and how do you know? Well, I decided to take those to tasks and see, are they true? Yes or no? Are we thinking of this right? Everybody here was talking about, what does she want? What does she want in the store experience? And I'm like, wait a minute. Can we validate and see if their guys are actually shopping? And yes, about 30% of all customers are men, and they spend about 50% more than she does. So it's like, I'm slowly
Really?
changing the vernacular to what do they want. So taking these different myths that are widely held within your company, challenge it, and double check to make sure things also change over time. The other weird one, you might be able to see it on YouTube, but it was an old anthropologist that turned into a comedian. His name is Rob Becker, and he did a skit.
Oh, have we lost Deb? I think we may have lost Deb. That's unfortunate. Just to confirm for Deb, yes, indeed, Mythbusters was big in Australia. Not a TV show anymore, but Adam Savage now has a really cool channel on YouTube. So if you're still into Mythbusters content, definitely go check that out. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit them now. Hopefully Deb joins us soon, but if not, I will do my best to answer them. Also, keep in mind, for those that are here, you'll get an email at the end of this recording in the next few hours that includes a few things. First is an email. In the email will be a link to the recording, so you can go back and watch different aspects of this presentation if you want to review it. In that email will also be links to the books and resources that Deb has mentioned here. Something Deb didn't mention that I'm personally a fan of, and I know is an area that has garnered a lot of attention recently, is behavioral economics. There's a really good book, a kind of, I think you'd probably call it a gentle intro book into the field called Predictably Irrational, that goes through various examples of how humans make what you would consider to be irrational decisions when presented with a given scenario, but that those irrational decisions are actually predictably irrational. We can predict that those irrational decisions are going to be made. Hey, Deb.
My battery died. Just like that.
Yeah. I heard a beep
apologize.
before it cut out. I was like, oh no, has my laptop died?
We're having a really good day, aren't we? Both of us. So I was
Yeah.
just telling you about Defending the Caveman. It was a really
Yes.
cool eye-opening experience that was out there. So I went to see the one-man act that's out there, and he was talking about the old hunter and gatherer societies of caveman days and how guys are the hunter. They want to get in, get out quickly, kill what they need and get back. And the women are more like, I touch and feel, I want to see, I want to gather all the right things to do what I'm looking at and take my time shopping. Getting food for the tribe, but it also transpired over into shopping. He was talking about that, where guys were literally park at the spot that's closest to the entrance of the store, grab the first thing that matches the criteria and get out, right? They're quick in and out hunters, shoppers, where women are more likely to look through all the options and find just the right one. So it was like eye-opening experience when I was over at the jewelry retailer, because we saw an overwhelming number of things that were being bought for women, but they were bought by men. And every time we were catering an experience in the store, it was all about her experience, not his. So we developed some really cool tactics and did a great study around what we call male-friendly shopping. So that was like an eye-opener to me. So seek inspiration from anywhere.
Yep.
Anywhere you are, how can you apply it to what you're doing today?
While you were rejoining, I was talking through behavioral economics and a book called Predictably Irrational. Have you delved much into that?
No, I haven't yet. I may have to look into it.
Yeah, definitely grab Predictably Irrational. It's a gentle introduction to behavioral economics, and talks about how humans make what could be considered irrational decisions when you look at a situation, but they are predictably irrational. You can actually predict that they'll make that irrational decision, which is interesting.
Very cool.
We're right at time, so I'm going to run through one quick question and then we'll end it there. And I'm going to give you this question, Deb, since you are the expert. A lot of organizations have an NPS as a North Star metric, but I have seen significant gaming of that metric, particularly when people there's some sort of bonus or performance-based incentive tied to the NPS number. The most hilarious and perhaps scary story I saw was a retail store in the US. Employees from that store started up their own subreddit to discuss tactics on how to optimize delivery of the NPS survey so that they got the best score. So lots of gamifying of the metric.
Yeah.
How do you defeat that? How do you prevent that from happening? Is it about linking it to commercial metrics, or is there some other way?
That we used to have our surveys going out to customers on the bottom of receipts. There was some standard practices of gaming it by like, hey, if they thought they did a good job, give me a 5. I'm really counting on it. I might get fired if I don't get things like that. Or if it was a bad experience, they just throw it in the trash. You don't need your receipt, do you? So there was some of that gamification. So now we send this out independently, right? So we send out our survey email invites through a third party who's sending it out on our behalf, and it's equal access to all people. So there's no more gamification that way. So that's one way that we saw around it. So think about how you're delivering this, and then how could you possibly counteract the potential for this, because it does happen. And you can also stop so many of the bonuses based on it too. There's other different reward systems that you can tie into it.
And the average order value and other commercial metrics like it, is that the most effective way you've found to drive interest and attention on a metric like Net Promoter Score?
Yeah, I mean that is super helpful, right? Because we do know that future what we put in for Net Promoter Score and their likelihood to return within the next 60 days is a lot higher than if they gave us a 5 on the overall satisfaction and their likelihood to return in 60 days. So having it that and the tie it to future transactions, look at your tail of success, being able to tie it to a customer number and know what they did after they mentioned these things, that really puts weight into what's important.
And is that the sort of work that you'd prioritize relatively early on in the either revamp or the establishment of an insights program?
It all depends on where you are. So where are you in the process? What needs to be done? But that is one of the key ones I think a lot of people will lean into, looking at that. It might be a big lift because not everybody, some people have things that are close to their heart. Don't touch my stuff. I helped make that. Why are you changing it? So you need to be mindful of these individuals and slowly build the trust. We didn't fully change out our voice of the customer survey until about my 4th year. So it took time.
Okay.
Even though early on it wasn't the greatest, we changed the method of delivery pretty quickly because we saw the gamification. But then after that, we changed it for good about, I guess, a year ago now. Took that much time.
It's interesting because I'd say, based on my experience of working with insights teams, you are, while it seems so obvious to link NPS or OSAT or any other CX metric to a commercial KPI and explore whether they are correlated or not, you all would be the exception rather than the rule of the people that have actually done that work. Right, Deb, appreciate you jumping on, and we managed to overcome all of the real world challenges thrown at us eventually,
Right?
and it was well worth it. I think that was super insightful. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bye.